One of the other challenges that we have is a written language does not carry complex instructions very well. Most people haven't really mastered a written language. I learned this when I tried to write a book. I learned that no matter how good I thought my skills were for writing, it just wasn't anywhere near what it needed to be. It took about 4 weeks, about 4 months to really get the whole thing together and have it to where I thought it should be, and about 8 more months of editing before I could actually release it as something that still needs some editing, in my opinion. But it was a learning process. It was a lot harder to do. So you think about how many times you sit down and you write up just a quick little email and send it off to somebody, and you don't really think about what the impact of it is. So recently I learned that, yeah, it takes sometimes 2 or 3 hours just to write one paragraph email. There was something that I heard, another point to bring in is organizations are spanning internationally these days. Who works with India for outsourcing? Maybe nobody in here, but at some point, you know, in your career, you'll work with that, India, China, whatever. It's a global world, and everybody says, you know, English, that's the language of business these days. But let me tell you, when you go into another country, a lot of the words that you say in English just don't really mean the same thing at all. Many spoken languages don't have these technical terms at all. They adapt English a lot of times to this. So the reason why I say this is, how do you write your requirements documents today? It's written, right? This actor shall do this, and when you click on this button, it'll do all this. And, okay, that worked back in 1993, but how does that work today? What's different now? Well, we've acquired a whole bunch of companies, and we're this big, huge multinational organization, and now, you know, have so many people that are speaking different languages and all these kinds of things. We have IT shops that do Java. We have IT shops that do .NET. Different types of databases. Nobody can really talk to each other in a really effective manner. There just isn't any universal language to do any of these things. So IT is a core part of our job and our daily lives anymore. And so computer systems are embedded into our lives, like I mentioned about the PDA device. The phenomenon is accelerating, yet we still use old technologies for our development approach. For example, waterfall, rational unified process, etc. Those are actually coming out of the early 90s. We're talking about a 286 computer here that didn't connect to the internet. And all of a sudden we plugged this thing into the internet and we said, okay, well that's really cool, let's run rational unified process against it. It's like, come on, you know, don't you realize that the whole landscape has now changed? It is really limiting the possibilities of what we can do. Communications breakdown, this is a picture of it here, as I was kind of alluding to earlier. We have this business view that's a very high level, idealistic, you know, sometimes unpractical view of how things are done from an executive level directive, and it gets down to a business analyst that's supposed to figure out how to make it work, make requirements off of it. The terms that are used in business are not very well understood by the IT and engineering. IT cannot really fully understand how the business operates because we're typically giving them just a simple flow chart with 500 pages of text explaining stuff that I really don't need to know about to get my job done. And by the time I, load up on a bunch of caffeine and I'm just so wired to get my job done, and then I can't sit down and pay attention to my text document anymore. The point is that all those text documents, they just go in the recycle bin. That's about it. There's a whole lot of effort that's put into that. It just doesn't translate over. And some of the words that are up on here, for example, the transaction, process, interface, warehouse, we use exactly the same words on the IT side, but they mean something completely different. These are just 4 little words here, but if you think about all the different terms that are used across an organization, how many of them match up to something on the other side of the organization that means something completely different, especially when you start throwing acronyms on it.